What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the things I learned this week on my journey to becoming a natural health practitioner. What I wanted to discuss this week is a concept that I came up with that I like to refer to as finesse life. It's loosely based on the principle of Yang Shen that I was discussing last week. So, for anyone who didn't see the video or just needs a quick refresher, Yang Shen is essentially deploying mindfulness in all of your day to day activities and tasks, and how when you can do that and be mindful of your situation, your health and the efficiency in carrying out those tasks is dramatically improved. And even though I came up with the concept of finesse life well before I was ever familiar with Yang Shen, it is pretty much essentially what that is. So for me, finesse life is basically synchronizing your breath, your mind, and movement, and when you do that more and more and you become better at it, the more you practice and the more you practice qigong, the more clarity you have and the better ability you have to see and also sense things around you, and notice where there's imbalances in both your environment, so the external world, and also internally, so where there's blockages in the chi and you're holding stress and tension, and also where there's a buildup of toxins. So essentially, and I won't get too scientific here, but essentially what it boils down to is that when the autonomic nervous system is relaxed, it's my belief that you become in tune with the energy of the universe, which is yang energy. And finesse life is about, like I mentioned, the internal connection, but it's also about the flow, being in the flow with the physical environment or your physical world, and essentially not forcing things. It's like just letting life come to you, which when you can do that and you have mindful intent, it reduces frustration and anger, and especially in terms of carrying out tasks or learning skills, the efficiency is dramatically improved, and your learning capacity, as well as your recall for later on, is also strengthened. So, I want to focus more on looking at the internal world in relation to finesse life, which is basically improving body condition. So, sensing or being or awareness of where, like I mentioned, you're holding stress or tension and there's blockages in chi. I think I'll save the finesse life in relative to your external world for the next video, so I have some more time to think about it and determine how I'm going to communicate that exactly. But um, basically, it's kind of like just rolling with the punches and your surroundings. And like I said, when you do that and you're focused, you can improve on your body condition or improve in the sense of whatever task you're doing at the time. So basically, I've been practicing and learning all types of different like relaxation, soft tissue relaxation techniques since I started on this journey. Just general massage, so like money spots, working out, knots in the muscles, and then also grounding, which I want to talk about a little bit later. Grounding techniques, and the one that I've been using the most and has benefited me the most is just general qigong practices. So that incorporates things like tai chi and also just stretching. And there's one stretch in particular that has really been beneficial to me in terms of opening up blockages and releasing tensions and stress that I've been holding for years, if not decades, which is the splits. And when I'm able to relax in the pose and be mindful of the breath and also just the tendency that I have to tense up the muscles, I've been able to open up all of these really deep seated blockages that I've had for years in my shoulders and my upper back and my neck. um, I've had kind of a difficulty in swallowing and just in my throat. Like I just kind of hold my tongue at the back of my throat, and it's really created some digestive problems for me and just like the ability to swallow really. But by doing the splits and relaxing like my hips and the perineum, which is essentially the spot where on a male the prostate is, um, I've been able, and actually also my heels, which is something you wouldn't think was associated with your hips, much less your upper back or your neck. But when I open up and just fully relax my ankles and my feet and my hips in the splits pose, I can just crack my back and release all this tension that's been there for years. And, I can work it out just with my hands and stuff, and I have in the past, but it just eventually will come back. And again, that's kind of my issue with the whole medical establishment is just diagnosing and fixing or curing the symptoms rather than the underlying cause, which in this case seemingly is a tendency for me to tense up my hips and groin area and all the muscles that I would have had no idea were connected to that area um, are able to open up as a benefit. So I kind of was led to the insight that a lot of the times health issues and genetic diseases, that's a completely different ball of wax altogether, but a lot of just like chronic generalized health conditions, it's my belief now that they really just boil down to prolonged tension and prolonged tendency to hold or tense up in stressful spots, and the compounding of that tension leading to eventually further down the road chronic diseases. So one of the YouTube channels I've been following and actually been putting a lot of their techniques into practice from is Melbourne Muscular Therapy, I believe it's called. And I came across the video where they were describing something that I thought really lent itself to what I was talking about or wanted to talk about for this video. So I'm just going to read a quote from one of the videos real quickly. So, the fascia contains our emotional history. Our body is the library of our life. It's been there throughout. That being said, every cell in our body is new every 7 years. But what remains are the scars, trauma, thought processes, and patterns. But they don't have to. We can heal things, clean things, and organize things so that we can move on with our life. We don't have to be the victim of our history, our past story. We can change it in the snap of our fingers, but we have to want to change it. Things can heal really quickly, but we need to be willing to let go and have something else come in and transform it. So I thought that was really interesting. Essentially, what it's saying is that, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but essentially what it's saying is just the tendency to hold all these stresses, and tensions and emotional trauma, whatever else that you have bottled up, is going to manifest physically in your health. So, like, physically in your muscles and your tendons and your ligaments, all of your soft tissue, and eventually it's going to lead to illness. So there's a few things that you can do to combat that. Like I mentioned, just general stretching is a really good way, but also grounding techniques and principles is a really beneficial way to not only just bring awareness to where you are holding tension or stress, but also to combat that and basically beyond bring attention to where, or your awareness to where it is, a way to alleviate a lot of those pains just through movement, essentially. And basically, today, in our current society, we are bombarded with all sorts of toxins. Basically, the way that we live right now, people are in a chronic state of inhalation. And what that means, or the implication basically, is that when you're inhaling, your body has a much higher tendency to go into the stress response or the sympathetic nervous system, also known as the flight or fight response. Because of all of these stimuli that we're dealing with constantly, or toxic stimuli, I should say, that we're dealing with constantly in the form of just diet or anything else in the environment, many people are functioning in a chronic stressed out mode all the time, characterized by excessive sympathetic nervous system activation and breath holding. And essentially what it translates into, like I said, is just tension in the hip flexors, the back extenders, all sorts of neck muscles, um, and basically, uh, because the diaphragm is fascially connected to all of these muscle chains, which, like I said, before I started doing stretching exercises, I really had no idea that all of these things were connected, especially to the diaphragm or to your breath. And from there, after holding all of these stresses in and these areas getting tense, the next progression kind of is just diseases. So, like, I know one really common one is anterior pelvic tilt, and then there's other ones like protracted scapula, which is just like a curved or bent shoulder blade. And beyond just from emotional trauma, I think with how common the desk posture is these days, people to sit hunched over like that at their desk for 40 hours a week or more, they have the tendency to also tense up all these muscles too. So, like I said, there's all of there's a plethora of reasons that we are holding tension that leads to illness and disease, and grounding is one really good way to alleviate that. There's a lot of science behind it. Real quickly, essentially, all of the toxins that we're exposed to, like I said, either from our diet or just in the environment from things like radiation, like Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or 4G, soon to be 5G cell signals, our bodies require significant antioxidant retaliation. And one really beneficial way to do that is just to connect with the Earth's surface, because it has a net negative electrical charge, which is characterized by excessive electrons. And so that makes the Earth a natural repository for electrons, which essentially supplies our body with antioxidants and mitigates oxidative stress. So, from a physiological standpoint, too, it has a way of, beyond just bringing awareness to where these tensions and stuff are, it actually can help alleviate buildup of toxins in our body. But in order to really fully achieve the benefits of grounding, you need to have direct contact with the earth. So, with your skin to the earth. So, essentially, you want to be barefoot on the ground, moving around. There's other things you can do in lieu of connecting directly to the earth. You can use earthing products like conductive sheets or pads or wristbands that are connected to the grounded component of an outlet, but ultimately to really fully utilize the benefits, you want to connect with the earth itself. Doing barefoot movements in nature, like I mentioned, is extremely effective to pinpoint imbalances in the chi and bring awareness to where the compounding or compression is in your joints and the soft tissue, like your muscles and other ligaments and tendons. So when you do this, and this is kind of a general principle of just qigong practice, but when you do it, you want to connect with the breath and the mind and the movement all together, and do pure balanced movements that utilize the right posture, which engage the muscles and your nervous system in a way that helps you tune in to your body and bring awareness to where those imbalances or blockages in chi or buildup of stress or tensions are. anything basically that's resulting from pent up trauma is going to be, will be able to be brought into attention in your mind when you can connect all of those things together. And essentially, that's finesse life again, is just synchronized breath, mind, and movement all together. Um, and being present and focused and eliminating all of the distractions around you. When you're distracted and you're focusing on, and this goes for just general qigong practice, not just grounding, but when you're distracted and you're worried over what you're doing with your hands or your feet, if it's the right posture or whatever, ultimately you're not connecting with your internal world, and you're not going to be able to really realize the full benefits. That's why a lot of times practitioners will close their eyes. In fact, actually, from what I've heard, blind people have a much easier time connecting with their internal world because they can't see, so they're less distracted, obviously, and they're not focused on seeing what other people are doing and making sure that they're doing the right poses and the right posture and everything. They're dialed in internally because I think largely because they don't have the sense of sight. So that's really beneficial. And I know it can take for a rookie or a newbie practitioner, someone who's just starting up, it could take up to 5 years to really find the coordination between the breath and the your mind and the movement, and that's even for somebody who practices every day. So it definitely takes time and dedication, but um, the more that you do it, obviously the better you become at it. And like I said, ultimately relaxation is probably the most important thing. If you can relax the body and connect with the breath and don't worry about the movements and posture and everything, all of that other stuff will fall into place. Basically, it'll just seem naturally, like you're when you're putting your arms up, you're breathing in correctly, your arms will just open up and your chest will open up like it should, and it's not even something that you're going to have to worry about too. So, for improvement to really take place, you just need to relax and be focused. And it's the same principle for when you're just trying to work out tension in your muscles or in your joints or your ligaments. If you're unable to relax and you're fearful, it's really just only going to exponentiate the pain or the tension or the trauma, the scarring that is from trauma, because you're creating the tendency and just compounding it, and it just makes it so much worse. If you really want to improve, you need to just fully relax and accept the situation. And that's how I was able to work out so many of these deep-seated tensions and stresses that I had in my body, was just becoming in tune and letting everything else fall into place. So I think that pretty much wraps it up for that. I kind of wanted to offer one exercise that I use, that I cultivated myself, that's really helped me in situations where I'm anxious or stressed out, usually in social situations where I have social anxiety, or just anytime I have fear, I guess, for whatever reason. Um, that's really helped me calm down and like activate my parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response, and eliminate the tendency to go into the fight or flight stress response from fear. So it's paying attention or focusing on certain points in the body, which are acupressure points, and not you don't have to touch them or anything, but it's just basically being mindful of them and envisioning them. And when I do that, I can really breathe deep into my diaphragm and um, realize the benefits of that and the calming effects of that, versus just breathing at the top of my lungs really heavily or really quickly, and eliciting the stress response. So the first one that I like to focus on is kidney. The acupressure point is kidney 1. It's essentially behind the ball of your foot, in the depression right behind the ball of your foot. right in the center of your foot, like right behind those two. There's two pads, and it's right there. So that's the first place I like to envision, and that's a really good one to just use to like breathe in, even in just typical meditation practice. It really helps me connect with the breath. Then from there, I like to go and envision kidney 10 is the next acupressure point, which is basically an inch above your kneecap on the back of your knee on the interior side. So there's like two tendons that are on the interior side, and it's the point is right between those two tendons, about an inch above the back of your kneecap. So I'll start with those 2 points and then connect with the Ming Men point, which is the acupressure point that it's called the Ming Men point, but the technical acupressure point is Du, or governing vessel 4, and it's essentially the spot in your lower back that is the lowest point on your back. So if you were to pour just a little bit of liquid or water onto your back, it's the spot that the water would pool up at. So it's like just right at the start of your lumbar, I believe. So those 3 points, and I like to envision one more, which is spleen 15, and it's generally associated with the middle dantian, and dantians are just parts in Eastern or traditional Chinese medicine that that qi is generated in. There's 3 specific points. There's the upper, the middle, and the lower dantian. And I'm envisioning in this one is the middle dantian. So the point that I associate it with is acupuncture point is spleen 15. So I'll connect all 4 of those points, and then the last one, like I mentioned, I had some issues with holding tension and stress and just swallowing in my neck and throat. And what helps me alleviate that is envisioning gallbladder 20 is the point, and it's just basically on either side of your neck at the point directly below the base of your skull, at the occipital intersection, basically. That's the point I like to envision. So it's kind of weird to envision, because there's 4 spots that are from your stomach or your navel down, and there's only one that's above that. But nevertheless, those 4 or 5 spots really help me tune in with my body, breathe deep, and just connect with the breath, and essentially puts me at rest and contributes to the activation of the parasympathetic system and the rest and digest response, where all of those good self-healing hormones are released, like serotonin and dopamine and endorphins, and just really helps to bring me out of a fear-based reaction to whatever the stimuli is when the sympathetic nervous system is activated. So I hope that helps. I know I got a little bit long-winded on that video, but I hope it could be something that would bring you value, and I'd love to hear your feedback. That's it for now. Take care, guys, and we'll see you soon.